Gotcha.
Quiet, I think I've heard it in here ever in my tenure.
Susan, I expect you to start meetings that way.
Join us in a moment of silence. I will call the August 13th meeting of the Common Council to orders. You've all risen. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Nick and Nora Levy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're going to go far in life taking control of situations like that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Would you please call the roll, Ms. Lees?
Mr. Boyce?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Elliott?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Schwartz?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Thurston?
Present.
Ms. Wiles?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have approval of our minutes from the July 23rd meeting?
So moved.
There's a motion to approve the minutes and a second from our July 23rd meeting. It's a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion to approve the agenda for tonight and a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I don't have any cards in front of me, but if anybody would like to speak, they can fill out a white card out front and get it to the clerk. Mayor's comments.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Thank you. I'll be very brief tonight, but I wanted to point out I wanted to brag a little bit on two areas. First of all, you may have seen that Noblesville was rated 12th safest suburb in the United States recently, which I think is a kudos to not only the investment this council has been making, but kudos to our public safety team. We said job number one of all of our duties every single day is to protect and serve and make sure this community is a safe community, and it's a great day to be ranked anywhere near the top of that list. And it's always better to be ranked above some of our neighboring communities in Hamilton County, which is great. So I just want to say thank you, and thanks to our police and fire department for continuing to look for innovative ways to keep our communities safe. Secondly, along those same lines, many of you were able to join us last week at the National Night Out. Our police and fire department, as well as many public safety agencies, were involved in that over at Ivy Tech. I wanted to share a quick story. I had a family approach me there that evening to ask if I was the mayor, and usually that's a loaded question, so I did admit that I was him. And they told me they had moved here 2 weeks ago from Miami, Florida. A natural question from anybody from Noblesville to ask, why did you move to Noblesville from Miami, Florida? They own a small business and were able to take advantage of our Make My Move program to move them and their two small kids who now go to Stony Creek Elementary here to Noblesville. And I wish you could have seen the look on their face. They were nearly in tears to talk about how wonderful this community is compared to where they came from. And their kids were so excited to be attending Stony Creek Elementary. So it's just a kudos to why we do what we do. You know that you've helped fund that program as a grant program from the state to help increase our skilled population, high wage earners here in the city of Noblesville, and this family was just delighted to be a part of that. So again, just sometimes we get stuck in the minutia of the work on a day-to-day basis, and a quick reminder of why we do what we do is oftentimes important. So those are the two things I had to offer. I'll be back up here later tonight as we introduce a new project in front of you, but happy to take any questions, and thanks for all you do to serve Hoosiers.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a representative of police and fire here tonight, so that's great.
That's right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Council committee reports. Downtown District, Aaron Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Downtown District Committee met on Friday, July 26th. Dave Johnson, Aaron Smith, and Megan Wiles were present. We talked about a slew of projects happening in downtown. It doesn't take much to realize that there are lots of projects going on in downtown with the traffic cones that are around. We first talked about State Road 32 and that project. Since we met, obviously there's been a lot of progress there. Phase 3 has reopened, and now they're going on to Phase 4, which bookends the project that we've all been experiencing for the past few months. So now they will be milling and paving from the State Road 32-38 roundabout to 6th Street and then they'll bookend on the other side from 16th Street to 19th Street. They were shooting to be done in September, but as we know with other projects, there could be delays. But they are moving forward on that as we speak. They also mentioned another NDOT project happening at 186th and 37. While it's outside of our downtown project, it was bid together, and so that's why we have, in Downtown District Committee, have talked about it together. We shifted also to talk about Pleasant Street. The 10th and Pleasant Street roundabout is now, that intersection is now closed, that is under construction. They were waiting on phase 3 to complete before they moved down there. That project is moving along to complete phase 1 of the Pleasant Street project. Talked about a little bit about other projects, the Forest Park to Federal Hill Trail that should start this fall. And then we spent a considerable time talking about the Door District, its approval and implementation. Just give kudos to the mayor and his team again on advocating for that program down at the state legislature and how important that's been for the city of Noblesville. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Roads Committee, Mr. Thurston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Roads Committee met August 2nd. Darren Peterson and myself were present. We talked about a lot of the ongoing projects we have. I will highlight a few. The 24th Street rehab program. We're getting ready to start Stony Creek Drive. Summerwood subdivision is underway. Concrete work is scheduled to begin mid-August. We talked about State Road 38 at Oakmont, Whitcomb Road. That roundabout is now open. There is a temporary light there that Duke put up. The permanent lighting is scheduled for late September. So that question actually came up in Board of Works this morning. So State Road 32 road construction signal project. You talked a little bit about it. They are milling and redoing that roadway and putting a new signal there at State Road 19. Project is expected to be completed by the end of August. 37 and 191st Street. The closure of the east leg of 191st Street was scheduled to begin yesterday and will be closed for 60 days. Once that is complete, they will close the west leg of 191st Street for 30 days. You also mentioned a little bit the Forest Park to Federal Hill Trail and that drainage. That has started. The tunnel going under the railroad tracks will most likely be constructed after Labor Day, with that project to be completed by the end of 2024. It's going to have a trail that's going to connect Forest Park to Federal Hill and also help out with a lot of drainage there for the park, Park Street, Legacy Christian School, and future development over in that area. Outside of that, the only other thing I'll do is highlight, just if you want more information, on 146th Street, you can go to streamline146.com. On 37, drive stateroad37.com, and reconstructingsr32.com for stuff on 32.
Thank you. Any questions? Finance Committee, Mike Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met August 8th. Dave Johnson, Aaron Smith, Megan Wiles, and myself. We went over an ordinance amendment to reimburse policy for travel and related expenses. We talked about some fiscal actions, mid-year budget adjustments, multiple additional appropriations, and multiple transfer appropriations. That and the claims docket come to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the claims as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the claims. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Right hand. Yeah, 9-0. Council to consider ordinance 410724, an ordinance amending rates and charges for the use of and services rendered by the city of Noblesville, Indiana, sewage works, and amending the service rates and charges for the collection and disposal of trash and solid waste. Matt Light.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Matt Light, Deputy Mayor. Just a few key pieces of the trash fee adjustment portion of this ordinance, and then Jonathan Margot, our Utilities Director, will provide some comments about the wastewater rates. The current fee has been in place since 2020 with a 4-year contract with Republic Services that provides waste and recycling services for the city. We have entered into a 4-year contract extension, which limits the cost increases under the contract to 3% annually. Just for a little bit of context, in terms of the economic environment and in the water, sewer, trash context, since the 2020 contract is in place, overall inflation in the country has been 17%, and inflation in the water, sewer, trash CPI index has been 19.6%. So we feel like the rates that we've negotiated are competitive. This 4-year average under the contract extension creates a $15.55 a month new rate for a $1.70 increase. We have a lot of information on the city website, both on the street department webpage and the utilities webpage, about some of the factors and cost drivers that go into this rate setting. But we've also, mindful of the impacts that this can have on our residents, we have maintained and expanded our hardship program, and we've provided a lot of information on that website, and we'll be pushing that out to audiences throughout the city going forward. One more thing to note with respect to our fee, we don't pass through any of our administrative processing costs, either for staff or for credit card fees. Those are all absorbed through other sources. Glad to answer any questions on the trash fee component. Otherwise, I would pass it on to Jonathan to add remarks on the wastewater utility rates.
Any questions? Ms. Jonathan Margot.
Jonathan Margot, Noblesville Utilities, honorable members of the council, and Mr. President. Noblesville Utilities is tasked with managing the sewage treatment at the plant and the collection system in a rapidly growing community with aging infrastructure. We are all, as Matt had laid out, dealing with inflationary pressures and rising construction costs. Unfortunately, at the utilities, we don't have, we have many other costs that we're balancing, that we have less ability to control as compared to the conveniently locked in rate for the trash that we were able to leverage. I really like to break out into 4 different areas. Some of our spending at the utility grouped into our ability to control costs and have internal controls of them. The first is our bond payments. That's our debt service. That is set from the moment we take out the bond. Those are fixed. The next is our salaries and wages. While they are increasing, we have internal controls at the city where we can set those wages. Moving on to areas where we don't have controls, our outside services. I think this is exemplified by our solids disposal costs, which have increased by 32%. That's our largest area of outside costs at the treatment plant. That's 32% since 2020. And then lastly, it's our capital construction costs and equipment replacement. There's various construction indices out there. One we looked at today, the Turner Cost Index, indicated about a 20% cost increase for construction costs. This is just reflecting the sewer and stormwater costs. For us, those sewer and stormwater is lumped into a single bill. The current residential rate has been in place also since 2020. It's $46.13. The city promised to fix that rate for 4 years, and I'm pleased to say we met that promise. That was it reflected a large jump from the previous year, about 10%. Annualized, that was about 2.4%, which compared to a neighboring community that uses a consistent every year 3% adder, that, the big picture is actually on the lower end of the spectrum. We just completed a rate study with our external financial advisor who prepared a rate model using a 20-year forecast. And this 20-year forecast included a more comprehensive capital improvement plan than we'd had in the past studies. And in addition to the operating capital costs, we wanted to make sure we had sufficient cash reserves for emergency repairs, and it also demonstrates a healthiness and ability to maintain our high credit rating, which long-term will save costs in the form of bond interest payments. Our proposed increase across the board for the sewage fee is 15.5%, which will result in a new residential rate of $53.28. That's a $7.15 a month increase. We're also proposing this as a fixed 4-year rate. This will not go up until 2028, and which annualized amounts to about 3.6 annualized compounding. So overall, I'm sorry, here we go, I lost. So the total increase between the sewer and trash, because let's face it, our residents, our customers are going to look at this bill and it's a single bill. $8.85 per month increase for all residential customers. You know, there's so many residents in Noblesville who may look at this with no concern, but we understand there are many customers who will feel a sting with any increase. And we do feel their pain. You know, I personally feel the pain. Anyone, I'm sure, on a fixed salary will feel it. We work closely with the mayor's office to identify any ways that we could alleviate the impact to those who are most in need. So 2 areas I'm proud to include in this proposal that's in front of you is we're increasing the discount for residents who qualify for the property tax deduction, raising it from $12 to $14. That's a 17% increase, notably higher than the increase to the sewer rate. But that's limited to people with over 65 with circuit breakers based on your home limits to your home value and income limits, disabled veterans and surviving spouses, or blind and disabled. Also, we are pleased that we are proposing to reinstate the temporary hardship program that was established during the global pandemic. And we want to expand the coverage to maintain that program outside of a global health emergency. This would then provide the exact same discount for anyone who's qualified for unemployment for the Department of Workforce Development, anyone with a hardship waiver from the Department of Revenue, assistance from the Township Trustee, or energy assistance through a low-income energy assistance program. The total discount for the entire bill, that's trash and sewer together, would represent $21 for what we've proposed, which is a 30% reduction in their bill. Overall, we are pleased to be able to provide assistance where we can. And coincidentally, when we do take a step back and look at this, purely coincidence, this was not by design, when we looked at the overall 8-year increase from the previous 4 to the currently proposed 4, we actually, coincidentally, we're right on par with neighboring communities with about a 3% annualized increase when it was all said and done.
Thank you. Any questions for Jonathan Mergo? If not, I will open the public hearing for ordinance 410724.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward, I would move that we close the public hearing for ordinance 41-07-24.
Second.
There's a motion to close the public hearing for ordinance 410724 in a second. There's a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 41-07-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 410724 in a second. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance 420824, an ordinance amending ordinance 060106 and all amendments thereto, adopting text amendments and updated preliminary development plan for the commercial lots within the promenade plan development adjacent to the northeast intersection of State Road 32 and Little Chicago Road. Amy Steffens.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Thank you, President Peterson, members of the council. Before you is an amendment to the Promenade Plan Development Ordinance that was originally adopted in 2006 for 153 acres at the northeast corner of State Road 32 and Little Chicago Road. Most recent development is the new Meyer Express grocery store. What we're dealing with today is an amendment to that ordinance for 3 outlots that have yet to be developed. Lot 10, Lot 12, and Lot 13. 12 and 13 are immediately adjacent to State Road 32. In 2008, another amendment was adopted that added restaurants to the list of permitted uses from the original 2006 ordinance, but it put a limit on drive-through windows to a maximum of one drive-through window, and then it also limited the location of those drive-through windows not to be adjacent to any of the public roads through the project. The applicant has requested another amendment to allow additional drive-throughs. It will not change the location where they are prohibited, however. The Plan Commission did recommend at 6-0, a unanimous decision, to forward the amendment to the council for adoption. In addition to the amendment allowing additional drive-throughs, the applicant also requested a number of waivers. Those are in the staff report that was in your packet. There is a discussion of each waiver and then sort of a summary on that last page of the staff report. It's important to remember that not all of the waivers apply to all three of the outlots. There were certain conditions of each outlot that necessitated the waiver request. The waivers generally deal with landscaping, building-based landscaping, the landscaping requirement of the State Road 32 overlay district, and again, that would be for lots 12 and 13, parking space, landscaping, as well as they reduced the number of parking spaces required based on the gross square footage of the tenants in each of the three outlots, and then they also reduced the size of the parking stall to a generally accepted size of a parking stall. It's very commonly used in other communities. Staff, again, put a summary in the staff report if you have any questions as to which waiver applies to which outlot. But again, it is coming to you with a unanimous recommendation of approval from the Plan Commission. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are the waivers in keeping with the rest of the waivers for the center? In other words, we're not reducing these waivers to below any of the other standards out there?
So some of the building-based landscaping is a reduction from what was approved throughout the rest of the center. However, what the applicant has committed to is that the number of plantings is going to stay the same, but the width of the building-based landscaping around each of the building may be reduced in order to make way for parking and drive-through aisles, that type of thing. Again, the parking stall reduction is pretty standard, 180 square feet versus the 200 square feet. I know in other communities that I've worked, 180 square feet was our standard size. So there are some waivers requested for these particular outlots that were not requested elsewhere, but again, particularly with the landscaping, it was important that with the reduction of the landscaping that we did see that landscaping moved, or the sheer number of plantings that would be required per the UDO planted elsewhere on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, does our UDO make a distinction between drive-up windows and pickup windows? Because CVS has a pickup window but not a drive-through. I don't think our UDO does that. So that would be something I would suggest in the future.
All right, we will note that. Thank you.
It just came to me. That was live. Any other questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve ordinance number 42-08-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve ordinance 420824 and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Thurston?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is approved.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance 430824, an ordinance amending section 3703 of the city's code of ordinances, reimbursement policy for travel and related expenses. Caitlin Moss.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Now Caitlin Moss.
Good evening, Caitlin Moss, Deputy Controller. I'm here with an ordinance proposing an amendment to the city's travel policy. This amendment would allow for a per diem at the federal rate rather than just the current reimbursement. The federal rate is the GSA rate, and it depends on the destination where you're traveling to. This may be paid in advance or as a reimbursement after travel occurs. and they would be required to submit supporting documentation of where they're going, when they're going, and why they're going, and it has to be approved by their director or their designee. Hotel, airfare, and similar expenses will continue to be reimbursed at actual cost, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No questions. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
I don't have a question, I just
No.
have a comment. I understand you've got a big day this weekend.
I do,
So
4 days.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Caitlin's getting married.
I
Oh,
am on
wow,
Saturday.
congratulations.
Best wishes.
Best of luck. I take that.
We'll just go with Megan's
I'll
comment.
take that. Can we strike that from the record?
Good luck. Caitlin's
Council,
getting married.
council to consider ordinance 440824, an ordinance approving bundled additional appropriation request and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce.
Jeff Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and the ordinance you have before you is one of 3 fiscal actions before you tonight that we're collectively referring to as the mid-year budget adjustments. And the first one here represents an array of additional appropriation requests across a number of different city funds for, various, costs that have revealed themselves since the budget, 2024 budget was adopted. Again, the process that we go through here includes, departments looking for ways to reallocate the funding that they already have, and if they can't, accomplish cover the need or accomplish the goal by doing that, then they look for an adjustment to their budget, and ultimately that, if that's needed, that lands with you. Excuse me. And as a consequence, you see here in this resolution a series of those sorts of requests that are going to require an additional appropriation. And the details of this were all, reviewed thoroughly with the Finance Committee on Thursday about what the purpose and reason behind each one of these is. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I understand this was well vetted in the Finance Committee.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance number 44-08-24, the August 27th meeting.
There's a motion to establish a public hearing for ordinance 440824, and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. 9-0. Council to consider ordinance 450824, an ordinance approving additional appropriations in the American Rescue Plan Local Fund and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Jeff Spalding.
This again, so as I referenced, this is the second of those 3 items in the 3 fiscal actions. And the real distinction here is that the purpose of these appropriations are appropriating the remaining balances of the ARPA funds, the fiscal recovery funds that were received as part of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The city has received those monies, and this is identifying again various costs that are going to help community or help our various departments in the use of those funds. And within this packet, there are actually some requests that are related to partnerships we have with community organizations, and we do have a couple individuals here from a couple of those organizations, Christopher Thomas from Babe Ruth Baseball and Christine DeJoy from the Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad. So they are also here to support this request.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance number 45-08-24 at the August 27th meeting.
Second.
There's a motion to establish a public hearing for ordinance 450824 and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you. Council to consider resolution RC 3124, a resolution approving an economic development agreement with Flaherty and Collins for a mixed-use development at South 8th Street. Mayor Jensen.
Good evening again, counselors. It's great to be in front of you tonight for this project. Just some brief history, and it's really not brief. If you've been around this conversation, this is a project that we have discussed internally, certainly a site that we have discussed internally for a long time. But what you have in front of you is what is internally referred to as Project Grain. It's a partnership with the Flaherty and Collins company, which many of you know. The Collins family is a very well-established, long time Noblesville family, so you couldn't ask for a better group to shepherd this going forward. The site we're speaking of here is in between South 8th and South 9th Street, right along the new Pleasant Street corridor. It is originally, the vacant land is the former home of Noblesville Milling Company's granary site, built in the early 1900s, and is a long-standing part of our city's history in the milling industry, thus the name from the Noblesville Millers. So there's a lot of history and heritage on this site. This project is one that has been batted around even prior to our administration in the probably the 2015, 2016 range. During that time, though, there was massive discussion around the expansion of Pleasant Street, so this site kind of got put on hold until we could redevelop and get a clear picture for the future of that. But what you're going to see in front of you and presented tonight is really a shot in the arm and an overall economic revitalization effort for our south end of downtown. Many of you know that our downtown is really the bread and butter that makes up our community. Over the last several decades, our downtown has grown, and expanded its footprint, which is really exciting. So as we look to revitalize downtown, we're looking to the south on this project, down this corridor. So what you'll hear about tonight is a plan for a 4-story mixed-use building and a parking garage, which would contain 225 luxury apartment homes, 5,000 square foot of commercial real estate, and approximately 300 structured parking spaces for residents and the public. The southern portion of this development, which is along Walnut Street, will actually house a trailhead area for the Nickel Plate and Midland Trace Trail area that will include public restrooms and lockers. So hopefully, if you haven't been down this area, this is the home of the 2 new roundabouts that are down there, soon to be open the brand new Pleasant Street corridor. So it's really going to be an action-packed area of the city. It's also where 3 trails converge, the Nickel Plate, the Riverwalk, and the Midland. So this is a real prized area of our community, and I think what you'll see in front of you tonight is a real nod to our city's history, and a real look forward to attracting new residents along this really exciting area in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Director of Economic Development, Chuck Haberman, who can run through the specifics of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The Mayor gave a lot of the great details of this project, set the vision. I will say, this project has been in the works for quite some time. Many of you are probably familiar with it. Our partners here from Flaherty and Collins and Structure Point are here to discuss this as well if you have any questions. But I think it's important to say this. There's a lot of activity happening on that part of town, and we talked about the convergence of the new Pleasant Street. This project has been around for a while, and so it's been contemplated in the Nickel Plate Master Plan and kind of the redevelopment of 8th Street. So as we continue to develop that area, this project, as the Mayor mentioned, is kind of the first piece, and it's been contemplated in all those plans kind of moving forward. So I'm going to talk more specifically about the resolution to approve the Economic Development Agreement. The project, just in general, is a $67 million investment. The city's contribution to that is $13.4 million. You can see the agreement that we're asking you to approve is for that amount. As far as process goes, this won't be the last time you'll see this project, so it'll go through the approval of the incentive. Once we get all the details ironed out, we'll come back for that approval. And then again, for the zoning ordinance, you'll approve that once it goes through the Plan Commission as well. Timing of the project, so we anticipate closing on the incentive about a year from now, Q3 of 2025, with an anticipated 2-year build. So we should see the finished project at the end of 2027. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Mr. Boyce.
Not really a question, but just some feedback. Just want to state I talked to many people about this project and given my thoughts on it. I'm a big proponent of working with Flaherty and Collins. I think they're a great organization, very supportive of that, and I'm also strongly in favor of the work on South A Street. I think that that is a big corridor that needs some love, and I think that this could be a great project for that. But at the same time as those, then we are giving quite a bit of taxpayer money here, and I just can't support a project where we're giving taxpayer money and we're not getting a whole project when it's missing a portion of that property that I think is extremely important. I think it's just not really going after the entire project when we're not doing that. So I would really urge us to do something there, but if we're not, then I struggle to do that. And I also struggle to give an economic development agreement on a project when we are going to have a plan for that entire corridor here soon, and this is before that. It seems premature, and it seems like we should come up with a plan and then go with the project and make sure it fits in there rather than vice versa. So for those reasons, and I have to be against it tonight, but I am strongly in favor, like I said, of Flaherty and Collins and of the development down there. So I hope that we can come to some positives in the next few weeks and continue talking about it to where I could change my mind.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to add something for the folks that are either watching or that are in here. One thing that I really like is the way that this intersects and interacts with the trail. The Midland is what you see in the right-hand side of that picture, and I think it's such a great asset for us to have a commercial or a retail spot right on the trail. As the mayor said, this is where folks are going to come from the Nickel Plate, the Midland, and the Riverwalk, and for that all to converge right in that spot is really an incredible asset for this part of town.
So there will be public assets there as well,
Yep.
restrooms, bike stations.
Yep.
It's a great asset on that
And-
intersection.
Yeah, and to Mark's point, I know that it is a tricky site, and I appreciate all you guys have done to try and solve all the issues with it. I think it's a really great asset for that part of town.
This really sets a nice tone for that redevelopment in that part of town. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve resolution RC-31-24 as presented.
Second?
There's a motion to approve resolution RC 3124, and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Just a hand vote as a resolution.
All right. This is now a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Any abstentions? 8-1-0. Which passes. Council to consider TA 0524, transfer approving bundled appropriation transfer requests. Jeff Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, again, this is the Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller. This is the third of three that I mentioned earlier, and this one represents the needs that are being met via transfers from our contingency funds that we have available for the city. That's why it had to be in a separate fiscal action from the additional appropriation request.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve transfer TA-05-24 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion to approve transfer TA 0524 in a second. I'm going to guess this is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0.
Thank you.
Any council comments? No council comments? Where's Brian Ayer when you need him? Meeting adjourned.